Your father failed you. He did not fail you out of malice or neglect. In fact, he failed you because he loved you far too much. When he looked at his son, he felt an overwhelming instinct to protect. He wanted to shield you from the harshness of the world. He sought to hide you from the brutality of human nature and the cold, sharp edges of objective reality. So he taught you how to be a good man. He told you to be honest at all times. He told you to play fair, even when others do not. He ingrained in you the belief that if you simply keep your head down, work diligently, and treat every single person with kindness, the universe would eventually reward you. He painted a vibrant picture of a moral universe. He told you that justice always wins in the end, and that the good guys inevitably finish first. With these teachings, he unknowingly committed a grave error. He sent a sheep into a dark forest full of starving wolves, armed with absolutely nothing but good intentions. And look exactly where that philosophy has gotten you today. You are overlooked. You are constantly used by others. You feel profoundly disrespected and completely exhausted. You are carrying the weight of a world that does not care about your morals. You are engaging with these words right now because you have finally realized a terrifying, unshakable truth. The fundamental rules you were raised with simply do not apply to the actual game you are forced to play. You are seated at a chessboard, but you were only ever taught the rules of checkers. You are desperately trying to be conventionally good in a reality that fundamentally only respects leverage and power. This naivety stops today. We must radically overwrite the flawed mental software that your well-meaning father installed in your mind. We are going to systematically replace the comforting, warm lies of a protector with the ruthless, clear-eyed strategies of a true conqueror. We must adopt the perspective of practical wisdom. We must look at the exact advice Niccolo Machiavelli would have given a son in order to survive. This is not a conversation about conventional morality. Morality, as it is taught to the masses, is a luxury reserved exclusively for those who are already protected behind high walls. This discourse is entirely about utility. This is about aligning our actions with the Stoic understanding of objective reality. We must focus intensely on what actually works in the natural world, rather than what we wish would work. If you are a person who is easily offended, you must leave now. If you deeply wish to cling to the childish fantasy that the world is inherently fair and just, turn away. But if you are finally ready to inherit the forbidden, harsh wisdom that builds true empires, fortifies the mind, and crushes all opposition, then you must listen closely. The very first lesson you must internalize is also the most painful one to accept. You must learn to forgive your father for being weak, so that you can finally give yourself the permission to become strong. Let us begin with the first grand illusion, the myth of merit and the nobility of suffering. Your father looked you in the eye and said, "Work hard, bleed for your goals, and you will eventually be recognized." He believed the universe was a giant scale, weighing your pain against your future reward. The harsh, stoic reality is vastly different. The objective world judges entirely by the final result, not by the sweat pooling on your brow. There is a deeply ingrained disease in the modern human mind. We can call it the labor illusion. It is the desperately held belief that the exact amount of pain and suffering you endure directly correlates to the amount of success and respect you rightfully deserve. This is a complete falsehood. You see this tragic illusion everywhere. You see it in the corporate office, in romantic relationships, and in physical pursuits. Men are actively destroying their own bodies and systematically breaking their own minds. They are burning the candle at both ends, frantically waiting for an applause that will never, ever arrive. They honestly believe the world is meticulously keeping a scorecard of their daily struggles. Let me assure you, the universe is entirely indifferent to your exhaustion. Nature does not care how many sleepless hours you put into a failing project. It does not care how incredibly noble and pure your initial intentions were. The natural world operates on cause and effect. It cares strictly about one single, undeniable metric, the outcome. The final, tangible reality is all that truly matters in the grand scheme of time. Consider a grand bridge spanning a rushing river. A bridge built by a morally flawless saint that collapses under pressure is an utter failure. Conversely, a bridge designed by a ruthless tyrant that stands firm against the storms for 1,000 years is a monumental success. History does not record or remember the millions of men who simply tried their best. History only remembers the select few who actually achieved the outcome. Your father carefully taught you to deeply value the effort itself. He taught you to take immense quiet pride in the endless grind. This specific programming made you an absolutely perfect employee. It molded you into a perfect, unquestioning cog in a massive machine. It made you a willing slave to the system. Because, as long as you find your value in the mere act of effort, you will never aggressively demand the actual reward. You have learned to quietly settle for the hollow dignity of hard labor, while someone else entirely reaps the massive profits of your exhaustion. The strategic mind understands that extreme effectiveness is the singular metric that holds any actual weight. If you can achieve the exact same magnificent result with a mere 10% of the effort, you are not being lazy. Through strategy, leverage, and cunning, you are being superior. The man who exhausts himself working 80 agonizing hours to achieve what another clever man easily achieves in just 4 hours is not a martyr or a hero. He is quite frankly a fool. He is completely inefficient and disconnected from the laws of leverage. You must immediately stop wearing your daily burnout and chronic stress like a shiny badge of honor. Absolutely nobody in this world truly cares about how tired you are. You must drastically shift your internal focus. Stop endlessly asking yourself, how hard am I working today? Instead, you must ruthlessly question, how undeniably effective am I being right now? If you are desperately digging a massive trench with a tiny silver spoon, and the man next to you is operating a massive mechanical excavator, your father would likely step in and praise your unwavering, stubborn persistence. A strategic master, however, would look at you and silently mock your profound stupidity. You must completely abandon the desperate need to be known as the hardest worker in any given room. That is a peasant's ambition. Instead, you must aggressively seek to be the singular individual who effortlessly delivers the exact outcome that absolutely no one else in the room is capable of delivering. The indifferent world only exchanges its resources for tangible value, never for mere sweat. If your true goal is to acquire vast wealth, or if you seek to wield genuine power and influence over your environment, you must forcibly divorce your identity from the toxic idea that you are compensated for your time. Time is irrelevant to the marketplace. You are only ever paid in direct proportion to the magnitude of the problems you can solve. Your father, acting out of love and a desire for your stability, essentially trained you to be a sturdy, reliable mule. He taught you to carry heavy burdens without complaint. I am here to reprogram your mind. I am teaching you how to firmly hold the reins. I am teaching you how to become the rider. We now move to the second critical paradigm shift, understanding the deep utility of controlled, precise boundaries, often perceived as cruelty. Your father gave you a seemingly beautiful rule for navigating conflict. He told you, always be kind to others, regardless of their actions. When struck, simply turn the other cheek. This is a recipe for perpetual victimhood. The strategic mind operates on a different, colder law. If an injury absolutely must be dealt to another man, it should be so severe, so totally decisive, that his future vengeance need not ever be feared. This specific piece of wisdom is exactly what makes the average person incredibly uncomfortable. It makes you instinctively squirm in your seat because it sounds inherently evil or malicious. But as a student of objective reality, we must strip away the emotional labels. We must clinically examine the pure, unadulterated mechanics of human conflict. Let us critically dissect why your father's gentle approach is profoundly dangerous. Your father taught you to view interpersonal conflict as a simple, temporary misunderstanding. He instructed you that if a person deliberately hurts you, you should immediately shower them with mercy. The fantasy is that they will witness your shining nobility, feel deep remorse, and magically change their harmful ways. He fundamentally taught you that offering unconditional forgiveness is a powerful, transformative weapon. In the unforgiving realm of the real world, freely given forgiveness is almost always interpreted as a clear signal of permission. When you actively allow another person to disrespect you without consequence, you are sending a message. When you permit a hungry competitor to boldly take a piece of your rightful territory and you respond with passive kindness, you are absolutely not teaching them a profound moral lesson. Instead, you are clearly instructing them that you are terribly soft. You are explicitly teaching them that there is absolutely no tangible cost associated with crossing your boundaries. The strategic mind is not advising you to become an erratic psychopath. It is not suggesting that you should ever derive pleasure from hurting innocent people for fun. Rather, it is educating you on the rigid, undeniable physics of social consequences. The rule is absolute. If you are forced by circumstance to strike back, you absolutely do not strike halfway. You never merely wound a known enemy. A wounded adversary is the most deeply dangerous creature in existence. A wounded enemy nurses a burning obsessive grudge. A wounded enemy now has the precious time required to slowly recover, to silently plot in the shadows, to gather malicious allies, and to eventually strike back. When they finally return, they will come at you with 10 times the original fury. You must think of the legendary Hydra from ancient mythology. If you foolishly slice off one of its heads without immediately searing and cauterizing the bleeding stump, 2 more vicious heads will rapidly grow back in its place. Engaging in half measures during any serious conflict is nothing short of intentional slow suicide. Therefore, if you consciously decide to establish and enforce a personal boundary, you must enforce it with absolute terrifying totality. If you conclude that you must cut a toxic individual out of your existence, you do not politely suggest taking a temporary break. You permanently block their access. You immediately delete their number from your device. You systematically erase their entire existence from your reality. You must intentionally leave no door even slightly ajar. You must provide absolutely zero hope for their eventual return to your inner circle. You actively and ruthlessly crush the very possibility of their re-entry into your life. This cold mechanical principle applies universally. It applies to corporate business dealings, to intimate romantic relationships, and even to the eradication of your own internal destructive habits. If you are a leader forced to fire an insubordinate employee who is actively poisoning the morale of your team, you do not offer them a generous month to comfortably find a new job. You decisively remove them from the premises immediately. You instantly sever all their systemic access. Your primary overriding duty is to protect the integrity and safety of the tribe, not to coddle the very poison that threatens it. Following your father's soft advice inevitably creates a life plagued by lingering chronic problems. It actively breeds frenemies, those who smile at you while secretly plotting your downfall. It generates an exhausting cycle of recurring senseless drama. It constructs a miserable existence where you are constantly endlessly swatting at the exact same annoying flies simply because you lack the required resolve to finally kill them. The strategic cold approach conversely creates actual lasting peace. Yes, profound peace. True peace is never successfully established by passively tolerating chaotic elements in your environment. Genuine, unshakable peace is exclusively created through the absolute definitive elimination of active threats. When the world clearly knows that crossing your boundaries results in immediate, disproportionate, and final consequences, they stop. When your reputation for decisive action precedes you, people simply do not dare to cross you. You effectively become a walking nuclear power. The brilliant paradox is that a true nuclear power rarely ever has to actually fire a missile. The mere undeniable fact that you possess the devastating weapon and that absolutely everyone knows you possess the cold willingness to use it practically guarantees that no one will ever attack. Offering kindness when you entirely lack the actual capacity for cruelty is not genuine kindness at all. It is simply forced submission. You can only be considered truly profoundly kind when you hold the absolute terrifying power to utterly destroy your opposition, yet you actively, consciously choose not to exercise it. Until you possess that dark capacity, you are not a good man. You are merely a harmless man. And in the raw, unfiltered hierarchy of human nature, harmless men are never ever respected. Harmless men are eventually cornered, exploited, and eaten by those who possess teeth. We must now pivot to the third crucial lesson, the deliberate and meticulous weaponization of your personal reputation. Your father, in his naive wisdom, told you to simply be yourself. He promised that people would naturally love you for who you truly are. The Stoic strategist understands a much darker, far more accurate truth. Everyone around you merely sees what you actively appear to be, while very few will ever actually experience who you deeply are. This concept of unfiltered authenticity is perhaps the single most damaging widespread lie of our modern hyper-connected age. We have become culturally obsessed with this dangerous idea of raw authenticity. Society constantly commands us to be relentlessly vulnerable in public. We are pressured to freely broadcast our deepest flaws and to keep it real at all costs. Your father instilled in you the belief that your external reputation is merely a natural, automatic byproduct of your internal character. He taught you that if your soul is pure and good on the inside, the external world will automatically recognize and reward that goodness. He was completely tragically wrong. A reputation is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. It is a carefully manufactured artifact. It is a deliberate, strategic construction. You must understand that all human beings are inherent cognitive misers. They are lazy thinkers. They absolutely do not possess the time, the necessary energy, or the emotional intelligence to deeply analyze the complex depths of your hidden soul. Instead, they will ruthlessly and instantly judge you based entirely on the superficial signals that you actively choose to broadcast. They will always judge the metaphorical book by its outer cover. They will evaluate the worth of the man by the precise cut of his suit. They will instantly assess the competence of a leader solely by the rigid straightness of his physical posture. Humans are visual snap judgment creatures. If you lazily walk through the world simply being yourself, slouching your shoulders because you feel a bit tired, openly complaining because you are slightly annoyed, or dressing in sloppy, unkempt clothing simply because you prioritize personal comfort, you are actively and intentionally sabotaging your own power. You are foolishly allowing the indifferent world to permanently define your worth by your lowest, weakest moments. The master of reality deeply understands that an effective man is essentially an actor performing upon a grand public stage. You must intentionally and meticulously curate your outward avatar. This crucial advice does not mean that you should outright lie about your actual skills or fabricate non-existent achievements. Rather, it means that you must ruthlessly edit your daily public presentation. You must become the director of your image. You must intensely highlight and project the specific traits that naturally command immediate respect from others. Simultaneously, you must fiercely hide and suppress the vulnerable traits that only serve to invite useless pity. When you are internally paralyzed by fear, you must outwardly project an aura of unshakable calm. When you are totally ignorant of a subject, you do not babble. You project a deep, impenetrable silence. To the untrained, observing eye, this calculated silence often looks exactly like profound, mysterious wisdom. When your internal world feels chaotic and unmoored, your external projection must be one of absolute, rigid order. Your father taught you that any form of deception or masking was a terrible moral sin. The strategist teaches that projecting the flawless appearance of a virtue is often far more vital than possessing it. Take a moment to deeply analyze the most incredibly successful and powerful people you currently know or observe. Do you actually truly know them as complex human beings, or do you merely know the carefully polished idea of them? You only know the myth they have built. You know the corporate brand. You only know the highly specific, tightly controlled narrative story that they have consciously decided to feed to your mind. If your ultimate aim is to rapidly advance and conquer in this highly competitive world, you must begin treating your public reputation like an incredibly delicate, priceless piece of fine art. You must painstakingly paint it with the right colors. You must carefully control the lighting that illuminates it. Most importantly, you must fiercely guard it against any external smudges or attacks. It is your most valuable social currency. If you inevitably experience a terrible, emotionally draining day, you absolutely do not broadcast it to the world. You do not write a pathetic weeping post about it for public consumption. You do not seek validation or comfort by crying to your professional colleagues. You take that dark, heavy emotion and you process it entirely in the silent dark, completely alone. You forge your resilience in absolute solitude. And then when the sun rises, you step back out into the harsh public light, appearing as a towering, unshakable mountain that simply cannot be moved by the wind. Mindlessly being yourself is a luxury meant only for helpless children and dependent pets. Being highly ruthlessly effective is the strict domain of formidable men. You must intentionally construct a formidable persona that flawlessly embodies the ultimate qualities. You must consciously wear this heavy constructed mask every single day until it slowly, inevitably fuses with your biology and becomes your second skin. Eventually, through sheer repetition and disciplined action, the mask actually becomes your true face. By acting out the role, you gradually transform into the very strong, highly disciplined, incredibly powerful man that you initially set out to pretend to be. The entire world is nothing but an elaborate theater. You must immediately stop sitting passively in the dark audience, merely watching other, bolder men perform their lives. You must confidently step up onto the brightly lit stage, seize the pen to write your own magnificent script, and play the demanding role of the dominant king so incredibly well that the watching audience is left with absolutely no choice but to fiercely believe it. This brings us to the fourth profound paradigm shift, understanding the cold mathematical calculus of human gratitude versus absolute necessity. Your idealistic father told you, always help others unconditionally, and they will naturally help you in return. You must maintain a deep, unwavering reliance on the inherent goodness of your fellow people. He believed in a beautiful reciprocal world that simply does not exist. The objective strategist counters this dangerous naivety with a deeply chilling observation. Men are, by their very nature, profoundly ungrateful, incredibly fickle, and chronic pretenders. As long as you are actively pouring benefits and resources upon them, they will swear they are yours entirely. They will pledge their undying loyalty. But the very second your own need approaches, they will swiftly and callously revolt against you. This specific lesson physically hurts to hear. It feels deeply cynical. It sounds inherently dark and pessimistic. But the Stoic mind does not judge information as dark or light. It only asks if the information is objectively true, and this is undeniably true. Your father taught you a flawed, transactional karma model of human relationships. He taught you to view interactions like a simple cosmic vending machine. He taught you that if you consistently drop shiny coins of selfless kindness into the slot of the universe, eventually, predictably, the machine will dispense a beautiful prize of reciprocal loyalty. So you eagerly lend your hard-earned money to a struggling friend. You consistently stay late, burning your own time to aid an incompetent coworker. You deeply sacrifice your own crucial needs for a romantic partner. You do all of this heavy lifting while clinging to the desperate unspoken belief that when the day inevitably comes that you are drowning in need, they will instantly rush to return the grand favor. And when that dark day arrives and they simply look away and do nothing, you are entirely crushed. You feel a deep, agonizing sense of betrayal. You cry out to the empty sky, asking, "After absolutely everything I sacrificed for them, The stoic master grabs you firmly by the shoulders and shakes you violently to wake you from this childish dream. You must immediately stop relying on the fleeting, weak emotion of human gratitude. Relying on gratitude is building a fortress on shifting sand. Gratitude, in reality, is a deeply uncomfortable psychological burden for the recipient. The average human ego intensely hates the suffocating feeling of owing heavy debts to another. When you constantly bend over backwards to do far too much for someone, you do not magically make them love you more deeply. In a dark twist of human psychology, you actually begin to make them deeply resent you. To them, your very presence becomes a constant, irritating reminder of their own pathetic dependence. You become a walking, breathing mirror that constantly reflects their own glaring inadequacies and weakness. If you truly desire unbreakable loyalty from the people around you, you absolutely must not rely on their fleeting love or their sense of moral obligation. You must coldly and strategically rely entirely on their absolute, undeniable need for you. You must meticulously engineer your position so that you become the indispensable keystone in their lives. The keystone is the singular crucial stone positioned at the very apex of an archway. It is the one precise piece of architecture that bears the weight and holds every single other stone securely in its place. If you violently yank the keystone out, the entire magnificent structure instantly collapses into a pile of worthless rubble. You must completely abandon the exhausting, pathetic attempt to be the pleasant person that absolutely everyone likes. Being liked is cheap. You must become the person that everyone desperately needs. Apply this strictly to your professional career. You must aggressively acquire a highly specific, complex skill that absolutely no one else in your vicinity possesses. You must cultivate and exclusively own the vital relationship with the biggest client, ensuring that no one else can possibly manage it. You must intimately understand the deeply confusing, archaic software system that completely baffles everyone else in the building. When you make yourself truly undeniably necessary to the functioning of the system, you become genuinely safe from the chopping block. When you are merely liked by your peers and your boss, but offer no unique, irreplaceable value, you are entirely disposable the moment budgets tighten. In your interpersonal relationships, you must position yourself as the unshakable source of immense stability and clear, unwavering direction. You must become the primary source of crucial resources, whether emotional, intellectual, or financial, that cannot be easily or cheaply replaced by another passing stranger. Your father instructed you to give of yourself freely, openly, and without any hesitation. The strategist firmly instructs you to give only strategically, carefully, and with calculated precision. You must absolutely never give any person everything they desire. You must always, without exception, hold a crucial piece of the puzzle back. You must diligently maintain a hidden, deep reserve of specialized knowledge, of unyielding power, and of exclusive access. The exact moment you hand a man absolutely everything he wants from you, he immediately has zero further practical use for you. And it is a cold, hard law of human nature that people will always eventually discard whatever they deem useless. This is an incredibly harsh, unromantic truth to swallow, but I challenge you to look closely at the dynamics of your own life. Who do you personally treat with the highest level of genuine deferential respect? Is it the eager, overly nice guy who instantly drops everything to do whatever minor task you ask of him? Or is it the formidable busy man whose rare nod of approval you actually have to sweat and bleed to earn? It is always the man whose precious time is incredibly scarce. It is the man who is entirely self-sufficient, the man who you clearly need far more than he could ever possibly need you. You instinctively respect the latter, while you subconsciously pity and use the former. You must instantly stop trying to pathetically buy cheap friendship with an endless stream of free favors. You must start actively renting their respect through necessity. We now arrive at the fifth profound lesson, mastering the duality of the lion and the fox. Your father gave you simple binary instructions. He told you, Always be completely honest. Be a straight arrow. Let your definitive yes mean yes, and your definitive no mean no, regardless of the nuanced context. He trained you to be one single, easily defined thing, a perfectly straightforward, highly predictable man. In the ruthless, chaotic arena of life, predictability is the absolute equivalent of sudden death. The strategist warns that you must possess the cunning of a fox to quickly discover and evade the hidden snares, and simultaneously you must possess the terrifying might of a lion to easily terrify the encroaching wolves. If you stubbornly choose to only ever play the role of the aggressive, roaring lion, you are doomed. The lion is loud, forceful, and relies entirely on sheer, blunt power. If you are always the lion, you will inevitably blindly step right into a cleverly concealed trap that you simply did not possess the subtlety to see. You will eventually be easily outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and bled dry by an opponent who is physically much smaller, but vastly quieter, vastly more patient, and infinitely more cunning than you could ever be. Conversely, if you choose to solely adopt the nature of the fox, always acting sneaky, constantly playing invisible political games, and perpetually avoiding direct physical conflict at all costs, your fate is equally sealed. Eventually, despite all your clever tricks, you will find yourself physically cornered in a dark alley by a massive, violent wolf who simply overpowers you through sheer, undeniable physical or hierarchical dominance. The Stoic ideal of practical wisdom dictates that you absolutely must possess the immense capacity for both extremes. You desperately need the dangerous explosive capacity for overwhelming blunt force, the heart of the lion. And in the very same breath, you must possess the cold, calculating capacity for invisible, subtle maneuvering and strategic deception, the mind of the fox. You must become a dangerous hybrid of both beasts. Your father warned you that playing office politics is an inherently dirty, immoral game. He insisted that you should simply keep your head down, do your assigned work perfectly, and avoid the drama. This exact foolish philosophy is the precise reason why you are currently rotting, permanently stuck in middle management, while vastly less competent but highly political idiots are continually promoted directly over your head. You must understand that politics is absolutely not a dirty word. Politics is simply the objective, unavoidable art of complex human dynamics. It is the sophisticated art of the fox. It is the crucial ability to accurately map the invisible hierarchy and know exactly who truly holds the real underlying power in any given room. It is possessing the extreme discipline to know precisely when to speak and exactly when to remain totally silent. It is the subtle manipulative skill of knowing exactly how to make your superior look incredibly good in public while secretly securing your own private interests. It is the dark art of quietly planting a brilliant idea deep in someone else's mind so subtly that they genuinely, passionately believe the idea was originally their own. If you stubbornly refuse to learn and play this intricate game, you do not win any moral victories. You absolutely do not secure the mythical high moral ground by refusing to participate. You simply forfeit your power and lose the game by default. You must aggressively train your mind to instantly switch between these two primal modes without a single second of hesitation. When you are sitting at a table meticulously negotiating a complex high-stakes contract, you must fully embody the cold, calculating spirit of the fox. You must read every single line of the microscopic fine print. You must actively hunt for the invisible legal loopholes. You must use your predatory intuition to sense the microscopic hesitation in your opponent's voice. However, the very second you are physically forced to defend the physical safety of your family or the core integrity of your reputation, you must instantly transform into the absolute terrifying fury of the lion. In that explosive moment, you do not negotiate. You roar. You bare your teeth. You leverage the absolute full crushing weight of your physical and psychological presence to instantaneously and permanently end the threat. A man who is only ever capable of being a lion is nothing more than a mindless, destructive brute. A man who is only ever capable of being a fox is ultimately a weak, pathetic coward who avoids all true confrontation. The incredibly rare man who has fully mastered the seamless integration of both beasts is the only man fit to be called a king. Your father possessed a deep moral terror of deception. He genuinely thought that any form of withholding the truth was a grievous sin against God and society. The Stoic realist teaches a drastically different perspective. Deception, when stripped of emotional baggage, is simply a highly effective neutral tool. In the brutal reality of nature, an animal's camouflage is absolutely not considered an immoral lie told to the hunting predator. Camouflage is a vital, totally necessary biological survival mechanism. You must apply this natural law to your life. You absolutely must never show all your hidden cards to the table. You must absolutely never eagerly announce all of your grand upcoming plans to everyone who will politely listen. You must entirely cease the foolish habit of loudly broadcasting your very next strategic move. You must be the cunning fox. You must deliberately feed them false signals. Let your enemies firmly believe that you are heavily committing to a massive attack on the left flank, forcing them to frantically shift all their heavy defenses to the left. Then seamlessly become the roaring lion and strike their exposed right flank with devastating force. We now face the sixth profound illusion, the fatal fallacy of the neutral, inherently good world. Your father lovingly told you, "The world is exactly what you make of it, my son." If you are a genuinely good person who puts good energy out into the universe, the world will reflect that goodness back to you. This statement is a profound detachment from objective reality. It is a dangerous, lethal hallucination of safety. The master of reality states plainly, a man who foolishly wishes to make a strict, unwavering profession of pure goodness in absolutely everything he does must necessarily come to absolute grief and ruin among so many millions of people who are absolutely not good. This is the jagged, bitter pill that always gets painfully stuck in the throat of the idealistic modern man. It shatters the comfortable illusions of childhood. You must realize that your father meticulously raised you to thrive in a gentle world that simply does not and has never existed. He essentially raised you to be a peaceful citizen of an imaginary utopia. He strictly taught you to operate every day under the wildly naive assumption that absolutely everyone else you meet is strictly playing by the exact same noble moral rulebook that you are. I assure you, they most certainly are not. You must wake up and realize that you are blindly walking through a chaotic, crowded global marketplace. In this bustling bazaar, fully half of the smiling merchants are actively trying to sell you toxic snake oil, while the other half are highly skilled pickpockets, silently waiting for you to turn your head. And tragically, you are strolling straight through the very center of it all, with your wallet wide open, grinning like a fool. You are smiling naively at every passing stranger because your father deeply ingrained in you the incredibly foolish idea that strangers are simply wonderful friends that you just haven't formally met yet. This is profoundly dangerous. In the objective Stoic reality, unknown strangers are absolutely potential active threats until they are rigorously proven otherwise through time, severe testing, and consistent, observable action. Adopting this defensive posture is not a sign of clinical paranoia or mental illness. This is basic, essential, tactical reconnaissance. The realist loudly advises that you absolutely must assume as a default baseline that all human beings are fundamentally driven by their own desperate self-serving interests. You do not assume this because everyone is inherently evil demons, but simply because everyone is biologically human. If you naively assume that your longtime business partner will absolutely never ever screw you over simply because you guys drink beers together and are great buddies, you are being criminally negligent with your own future. You are practically begging the universe to be brutally betrayed. The true strategic son does not rely on handshakes. He rigorously drafts and forces the signing of ironclad, legally binding contracts. He meticulously reads and rereads every single term and condition. He aggressively protects his own downside at all costs. He does all of this not because he is a dark, miserable cynic who hates his friends, but because he possesses a profound, healthy respect for the undeniable, unchanging reality of human nature under pressure. He knows that desperation and greed can easily turn the best of friends into the worst of enemies overnight. If you foolishly assume that your spouse will absolutely never leave your side, simply because you both muttered some traditional vows at an altar over 10 long years ago, when you rely on past promises, you inevitably stop actively trying in the present. You lazily let your body, your ambition, and your sharp edge completely go to rot, resting entirely on the laurels of yesterday. And then you act entirely shocked, deeply victimized, and utterly devastated when they inevitably pack their bags and leave you because they found someone else who is incredibly hungry, physically sharp, intellectually engaging, and vibrating with actual life. The strategic Stoic individual profoundly understands that absolutely every single relationship in existence is a continuous, never-ending daily negotiation of value. He deeply knows that he must actively, continuously provide massive, undeniable value to his partner every single day. He knows he must remain physically and mentally strong. He knows he must continue to be an undeniable high-value catch in the competitive marketplace of life. He absolutely never, for even a single second, lazily rests his entire future on the decaying, unreliable goodness of a long-forgotten past promise. Your father's incredibly soft, overly optimistic advice actively made you intellectually lazy in your daily judgment of character. It intentionally blinded you to glaring, massive red flags in the people around you. When someone lashes out, you tell yourself, "Oh, he's just having a uniquely bad day, he didn't mean it." No, you fool. He just explicitly showed you without a shadow of a doubt that he is emotionally unstable. Believe him instantly. When a partner tells a small, seemingly insignificant lie, you rationalize, "Oh, she didn't truly mean to deceive me. It was just a mistake." No, she just actively demonstrated to you through clear action that she fundamentally lacks core integrity. Believe her actions immediately. You must stop endlessly painting over the massive structural cracks in your reality with the thick, blinding brush of your father's toxic optimism. You must possess the courage to stare directly, unflinchingly at the jagged cracks in the foundation. You must intensely study them. You must understand their depth and their trajectory. Because it is exactly at those ignored, painted-over cracks where the entire building of your life will eventually violently break apart and collapse upon your head. You must demand to see the world exactly as it is, no matter how ugly. This commitment to harsh truth prepares us for the seventh lesson, mastering the complex, brutal economy of fear versus love. Your father, projecting his own deep insecurities, told you, "Above all else, I want you to be deeply loved by everyone. I desperately want you to be popular and well-liked in your community." The strategist counters with a legendary, chilling maxim that has survived centuries for a reason. He states unequivocally that it is vastly better and infinitely safer to be genuinely feared than to be merely loved, if you are forced by circumstance to choose between the two. We must immediately and clinically clarify this concept, because the modern mind instantly recoils at the word fear. Fear in this highly strategic, classical sense absolutely does not mean inducing sheer screaming terror in the innocent. It does not mean that you are violently walking around your office, screaming at people and breaking things like a deranged maniac. Fear, in this precise context, translates directly to profound, unwavering respect. It strictly means that the people around you possess a deep, healthy fear of the swift, absolute consequences of crossing your boundaries. It means they possess a deep, genuine fear of ever disappointing your high standards. Most importantly, it means they hold a profound underlying fear of permanently losing access to you and your immense value. Let us contrast this with love. Love is an incredibly volatile, highly unstable chemical and emotional state. Love is merely a fleeting feeling. Human beings rapidly fall in and out of love based on the shifting weather, their daily fluctuating hormones, or their completely unpredictable morning moods. Love is something that is freely given to you by them, and because they are the sole owners and distributors of that emotion, it means they possess the absolute power to abruptly take it back whenever they casually choose to do so. True respect, however, this strategic form of fear, is something entirely different. It is never freely given. It is painstakingly heavily earned by you through undeniable competence and an unbending backbone. This respect is firmly anchored in the objective reality of your extreme capability, your disciplined nature, and your absolute willingness to enforce consequences. Consider the workplace dynamics. If your employees genuinely deeply love you like a favorite uncle, but they possess absolutely zero fear of your authority, they will inevitably, predictably slack off. They will consistently arrive late, armed with endless, pathetic excuses. Why will they do this? Because they know the boss is just a really nice guy. They know he will always be endlessly understanding, deeply forgiving, and completely unwilling to actually punish them. They will walk all over your kindness. You must remember that you are absolutely not running a non-profit emotional charity designed to make people feel warm inside. You are leading a highly focused, demanding mission that requires strict execution. This undeniable dynamic applies exactly the same way to parenting. If your growing children deeply love you as their best friend, but they do not possess a healthy foundational fear of your strict authority, they will inevitably become chaotic and unruly. They will entirely lack the necessary internal discipline required to survive. They will completely lack the rigid mental structure needed to achieve anything difficult in life. They will ultimately fail in the brutal arena of the real world because you, out of a selfish desire to be liked completely, failed to teach them the most vital lesson of all, that poor actions always carry swift, severe, and undeniable consequences. A father who selfishly chooses to only be a fun, easygoing buddy inevitably raises a child who is an entitled, completely useless brat, entirely unprepared for the harsh realities of adulthood. Similarly, a business leader who desperately prioritizes being everyone's favorite friend inevitably leads a weak, undisciplined team that is absolutely destined for catastrophic failure when faced with true market pressure. You must aggressively cultivate the exact kind of heavy respect where people nervously check their submitted work twice or even 3 times before ever daring to bring it into your office and place it on your desk. They do this not because they are terrified that you will throw a childish tantrum or yell at them, but simply because your established, unspoken standard of excellence is so incredibly impossibly high that they are deeply, genuinely afraid of falling short of it and losing your high regard. You absolutely must demand the exact kind of profound respect where your romantic partner naturally treats you with the utmost careful dignity. They must treat you well not merely because they feel the warm, fuzzy emotion of love toward you today, but primarily because they deeply intellectually know that you possess more than enough ironclad self-respect to instantly pack your bags and walk away forever if they ever dare to treat you poorly. That incredibly powerful silent boundary is the true essence of strategic fear. It is the deep, motivating fear of agonizing loss. It is the powerful fear of falling short of the formidable standard that you embody. Your soft, well-meaning father desperately wanted you to be hugged by the world. The cold, brilliant strategist actively wants you to be unquestioningly obeyed and deeply respected. You can successfully build a massive, enduring, multi-generational empire solely on a rock-solid foundation of strict obedience, high standards, and deep respect. However, you can only ever build a messy, temporary, highly emotional commune based strictly on the fleeting feeling of love. And history proves without a single exception that all communes eventually and inevitably collapse into total chaos and ruin when resources become scarce. You must choose the empire. You must permanently discard the commune. You must learn to command the room with your mere presence and your uncompromising standards. This brings us to a natural resting point in our philosophical deconstruction of your father's flawed legacy. The mind can only absorb so much radical recalibration at once. We have systematically destroyed the illusions of effort, kindness, reputation, gratitude, naive honesty, toxic optimism, and unconditional love. We have laid the cold, hard, stoic foundation for the true architecture of power and extreme effectiveness. You must let these first 7 massive pillars deeply settle into your psyche. You must begin to actively observe these brutal, undeniable dynamics playing out in real time in your office, in your home, and in the streets. Watch the harmless men be slowly consumed. Watch the emotional men be easily manipulated. Watch the overly generous men be completely drained of their resources and then carelessly tossed aside when empty. As you observe this, do not feel anger or sorrow. The Stoic does not weep at the rain for making him wet. He simply builds a sturdy roof. You must view this newly revealed reality with the cold, detached fascination of a master architect observing the raw, unshaped materials of his trade. You are finally beginning to see the hidden matrix of human power dynamics. You are finally opening your eyes to the brutal game as it is actually played. The transformation has begun, but it is far from complete. The remaining lessons will demand even more from you. They will require you to fundamentally alter your relationship with risk, with money, with the opinions of the terrified sheep around you, and ultimately with the deeply ingrained, idealized image of the father himself. Prepare your mind for the final descent into absolute, unvarnished reality. The sheep dies, the strategist wakes. We must now violently dismantle the 8th grand illusion, the dangerous seductive comfort of manufactured safety, and the profound misunderstanding of fortune. Your father, a man forged in a different era, looked at you with deep concern and said, "It is always better to be safe than sorry." He believed in the virtue of hesitation. He desperately urged you to take the steady, unremarkable job. He begged you never to carelessly gamble with your precious future. The Stoic master, however, delivers a much harsher, more demanding reality. He states that fortune is a wild, unpredictable force, and if you truly wish to master her, you must treat her with aggressive audacity. Let us strip away the archaic classical language and examine the raw, objective truth beneath. The strategist is directly telling you that the universe heavily favors the bold and the aggressive. Your father, operating out of a deep-seated fear of lack, carefully raised you to worship at the altar of total safety and absolute predictability. He systematically taught you to view any form of uncalculated risk as a catastrophic moral mistake. He deeply wanted you to have a quiet pension, a suffocating 30-year mortgage, and a highly predictable, soul-crushing daily routine. He fundamentally wanted you to be a sturdy, quiet ship, resting peacefully in a highly sheltered harbor. But you must understand the basic, undeniable physics of existence. Ships are absolutely not built to remain permanently docked in safe harbors. Ships that stubbornly stay in the harbor ultimately rot from the inside out. The sturdy wood slowly decays. The heavy barnacles grow thick slowly, consuming the hull in the quiet, stagnant water. They ultimately sink to the bottom without ever once facing the glorious fury of a real storm. Absolute safety is nothing more than a very slow, highly comfortable death. When you actively, obsessively avoid taking risks, you also actively avoid all human vitality. You completely avoid the vital, necessary friction that sharpens a man's soul. Look closely at the incredibly safe, predictable men surrounding you in your daily life. Look deeply into their tired, defeated eyes. The vibrant light of ambition is entirely gone. They have tragically traded their immense biological potential for a fleeting sense of security. And the darkest joke of all is that this security is a complete illusion. One sudden economic recession, one unexpected technological update, and their entire carefully constructed safe existence is instantly gone. The strategist deeply understood that fortune, what the weak call luck, is a wild, untamed force of nature. It absolutely cannot be pleaded with. It cannot be logically negotiated with by a coward. It must be aggressively, decisively seized. The true outlier deeply knows that he must routinely, intentionally expose himself to absolute chaos in order to find rare opportunity. If you never boldly approach the intimidating opportunity because you prefer to remain safe, you will inevitably die entirely alone and full of bitter regret. If you never aggressively start the risky enterprise because you cherish your meager savings, you will die poor and forgotten. If you never loudly speak the highly controversial, dangerous truth because you crave social safety, you will die a voiceless ghost. Your father taught you to build a thick fortress and hide quietly inside it. The Stoic master aggressively teaches you to meticulously build a disciplined army and boldly march out of the heavy iron gates. You absolutely must develop an iron stomach for extreme volatility. You must actively learn to look at a highly dangerous, risky situation, not with trembling fear, but with a deep, predatory appetite for conquest. You must ask yourself, what massive territory can I conquer in this chaos? You must immediately stop obsessively calculating what tiny things you might lose. You must start strictly calculating the massive empires you will absolutely never gain if you choose to stay entirely still. The man who risks nothing ultimately has nothing and is nothing. We now confront the ninth crucial lesson, the profound misunderstanding of wealth and the realization that money is strictly ammunition. Your father, operating from a mindset of endless scarcity, told you, always save your money for a rainy day. Money is meant to buy comfort and security. He viewed capital as a soft cushion against the world. The strategist violently shatters this peasant mentality. He dictates that a true prince should have absolutely no other object or thought, but war its strategic organization and its unrelenting discipline. Your father fundamentally taught you that money is primarily a tool for mindless, endless consumption. This is the mindset of the modern serf. You exhaust yourself at work, you finally get paid, and then you immediately buy a softer couch. You buy a slightly faster car. You go on a fleeting 2-week vacation to briefly escape your misery. You essentially use your hard-earned money to make the interior of your prison cell feel slightly more comfortable. This is a pathetic existence. The strategist teaches that tangible resources are exclusively meant for building absolute sovereignty. Money is absolutely not for buying shiny, depreciating things. Money is the raw, heavy material used for buying absolute freedom and enforcing power. In the objective strategic view, your bank account is not a savings pool, it is your war chest. Your capital is your literal standing army. If you fiercely possess 6 months of living expenses aggressively, saved, your tyrannical boss absolutely cannot abuse you. You possess the ultimate power of walking away. That is true, undeniable power. If you possess heavy capital to strategically invest, you can physically shape the world around you. That is objective power. If you possess the immediate financial means to hire ruthless lawyers, brilliant accountants, and silent fixers, you are completely insulated from the common petty problems that totally destroy common unprepared men. That is the highest form of earthly power. Your father told you to be frugal to retire weak at 65. I am strictly telling you to be absolutely unspeakably ruthless with your personal finances today so that you can become an incredibly dangerous, formidable force right now. You must immediately stop looking at the massive price tag of a luxury car just to briefly impress pathetic people that you genuinely despise deep down in your core. Instead, you must intensely look at the required price tag of your own total autonomy. Every single dollar you foolishly waste on empty social status is a loyal, capable soldier that you have pointlessly sent to die for absolutely no strategic reason. You must meticulously keep your soldiers. You must aggressively amass them in the dark. When you finally possess enough of them, you absolutely do not need to desperately look rich to the crowd. You simply are powerful. The ultimate goal is never to superficially look like a wealthy king to the peasants. The sole goal is to actively possess the terrifying, undeniable power of a true king. One path is mere vanity, the other is reality. Your well-meaning father tragically confused the two concepts. He genuinely thought that owning a nice suburban house meant he had finally made it in life. But the cold reality was that the massive bank entirely owned his house, and his demanding corporate job entirely owned his time. He was nothing more than a modern serf with a heavy mortgage. You must fiercely resolve to be the absolute lord of your own finite life. You must use your financial capital to aggressively build the towering, impenetrable stone walls of your personal fortress. You must never waste those precious stones merely to decorate the soft, vulnerable interior. Wealth is the heavy armor that protects your autonomy. This leads us to the 10th demanding lesson: mastering the dark art of being utterly misunderstood and willingly becoming the villain. Your father, terrified of social ostracization, nervously told you, "What will the neighbors think? Please do not make a scene. Just fit in quietly." He worshipped at the altar of social harmony and conformity. The strategist delivers a crushing blow to this weak mindset. Greatness and misery are the two exact words that perfectly dub the heavy, lonely burden of the true prince. Here is the absolute darkest truth that your father desperately tried to protect your fragile mind from. To achieve anything truly great, you must embrace the darkness. You absolutely must be completely willing to be cast as the malicious villain in someone else's emotional story. Your father was internally terrified of the slightest social rejection. He desperately wanted to be seen as a warm, friendly pillar of the local community. He deeply craved the silent nod of approval from strangers at the grocery store. But the Stoic law of reality is absolute. You simply cannot aggressively change the world, impose your will, and simultaneously remain liked by absolutely everyone in it. It is a mathematical impossibility. If you begin to fiercely succeed, your deeply jealous, stagnant friends will immediately and loudly call you arrogant and disconnected. If you dare to enforce impossibly high standards, your lazy, incompetent employees will quickly label you a ruthless, heartless tyrant behind your back. If you boldly speak the objective, unvarnished truth, the weak, comfortable liars will desperately call you a dangerous radical. If you prioritize your grand mission over petty domestic drama, they will howl. Your own family members will bitterly call you cold, distant, and unfeeling. To all of this, the Stoic strategist replies, "Good, let them talk, let them complain." The master knew that any leader who becomes obsessively concerned with being perfectly understood by the masses is entirely paralyzed. He becomes a hostage to their fragile emotions. A weak man spends all of his precious finite time endlessly explaining his actions to those who refuse to understand. He burns all of his vital energy, desperately trying to carefully manage the erratic, shifting emotions of the mindless mob. You absolutely must develop a thick, impenetrable immunity to the bleating opinions of terrified sheep. When a weak individual loudly calls you selfish for ruthlessly pursuing your massive goals, you absolutely do not apologize. You never ever stop to explain your motives. You must coldly realize that selfish is simply the manipulative, weaponized word they deploy to guilt you into abandoning your path and serving their own lazy selfishness. When an uninspired person dramatically calls you obsessed or unbalanced, you must clearly realize that this is merely the defensive vocabulary the mediocre heavily use to describe the fiercely dedicated. Your father taught you that interpersonal conflict is always a glaring sign that you are doing something morally wrong or entirely inappropriate. I am telling you the exact opposite. Constant friction-filled conflict is very often the clearest, most undeniable sign that you are finally doing something entirely right. You are actively disrupting their comfortable, rotting status quo. You are violently holding a massive, terrifying mirror up to their own profound inadequacy and failure. Of course, they hate you. They absolutely have to hate you in order to protect their own incredibly fragile, decaying egos from shattering completely. You must learn to wear their deep misunderstanding and their bitter hatred like a suit of heavy, impenetrable iron armor. If you currently have absolutely no enemies, you have no true character. If you have absolutely no one loudly criticizing your bold actions, it is simply because you are doing absolutely nothing worthy of historical note. You must fully embrace the villain arc. In the brutal mathematics of reality, becoming the villain in the eyes of the weak is very often the only viable path to achieving the hero's ultimate objective result. We now transition to the 11th vital discipline, the terrifying immense power of strategic weaponized silence. Your father, believing in the healing power of words, told you, always communicate openly, talk it out. If you have a deep problem, just say it. He taught you that constant vocalization was the key to human connection. The strategist violently counters this. He states that the very first method for accurately estimating the true intelligence of any ruler is to silently look at the caliber of men he has around him and strictly observe how much he actively speaks. We previously discussed outward reputation, but this specific lesson is about daily tactical operations. Your father essentially taught you that quiet silence is deeply awkward. He taught you that you bear a social responsibility to quickly fill any empty conversational void with mindless chatter. He believed that if you simply over-explain your delicate feelings, other people will naturally empathize and deeply understand your vulnerable position. In the ruthless arenas of high-stakes negotiation, calculated seduction, and absolute war, profound silence is the ultimate devastating weapon. When you constantly talk, you rapidly bleed crucial information. You openly reveal your hidden insecurities. You reveal your grand plans. You accidentally broadcast your exact level of intelligence, or lack thereof. You expose your exact vulnerable position on the board. Vital strategic information constantly flows entirely out of you and into their hands. Conversely, when you remain completely terrifyingly silent, you become a black hole. You absorb. Crucial, unguarded information heavily flows entirely into you. People are absolutely terrified of silence. Silence aggressively forces them to look inward. It makes them feel deeply judged and highly unstable. So, to alleviate their own mounting internal anxiety, they inevitably start talking frantically. They start desperately bidding against their own interests. They start foolishly revealing their deepest secrets just to break the heavy tension in the room. Your emotional father told you to bravely speak your truth to the world. The cold strategist would grab you and tell you to immediately shut your mouth, step back and carefully listen to their endless, uncoordinated lies. When you are burning with anger, you must say absolutely nothing. Uncontrolled anger always makes your tongue incredibly sloppy. When you are vibrating with intense excitement, you must say absolutely nothing. Unchecked excitement makes you incredibly vulnerable to manipulation and over-promising. When you are completely uncertain of your next move, say absolutely nothing. To the ignorant, observing crowd, absolute stone-faced silence always looks exactly like unshakable confidence. You must intentionally create a massive psychological vacuum in the room. Let the others frantically rush forward to fill it with their nervous energy. Let them completely exhaust their mental reserves, desperately trying to figure out what you are thinking. The man who fundamentally cannot control his own tongue has absolutely no hope of controlling his reality. The very next time you find yourself deeply engaged in a high-stakes, stressful conversation, you must ruthlessly test this law. When your opponent finally finishes speaking their piece, you absolutely must wait 4 full agonizing seconds before you offer a single word in response. You must look them dead in the eye, utterly emotionless. You silently, deliberately count to 4 in your mind. Just watch them physically squirm under your gaze. Watch them instantly start to heavily doubt the exact words they just confidently stated. Watch the invisible power dynamic violently shift across the table and land securely, heavily right into the palms of your quiet, disciplined hands. Your father taught you to politely participate in the endless, noisy conversation of life. I am strictly teaching you how to utterly dominate it, and true lasting domination is almost always entirely silent. It is felt deeply in the bones, not heard in the ears. Master the pause, and you master the deeply insecure minds of the men sitting across from you. This brings us to the 12th and perhaps most painful lesson, the absolute necessity of engineered distance and ruthless curation. Your father told you, family is absolutely everything. Old friends are forever. He genuinely believed that the circumstances of your birth or the accidents of your childhood dictated your permanent, inescapable loyalties. The strategist shatters this sentimental trap with a profoundly chilling observation. He notes that men will far sooner forget the violent death of their own father than they will ever forgive the loss of their personal patrimony and wealth. This is the absolute coldest, most unforgiving lesson of all. Human psychology stripping away all romantic illusions. Your father, deeply ingrained in you, the concept of unconditional blind loyalty. He taught you that merely sharing genetic DNA or having a shared history of childhood memories automatically creates a sacred bond that must absolutely never be broken, regardless of their current toxic behavior. This is an anchor strictly designed to actively drown you. The strategist coldly teaches that extreme proximity heavily breeds extreme contempt. Constant, unchecked familiarity aggressively breeds undeniable weakness and a total lack of respect. You simply cannot effectively lead or command people who view you as their exact, unimpressive equal. You cannot demand high respect from those who refuse to see your growth. You absolutely cannot command the necessary fear and respect from the very people who clearly remember seeing you drunk, weak, and foolish at 18 years old. You absolutely cannot continue to aggressively grow and conquer if you remain permanently heavily tethered to weak, stagnant people who absolutely stubbornly refuse to evolve themselves. Sometimes, to save your own life, you must violently fire your oldest friends. Sometimes you must energetically, if not legally, totally divorce your own toxic family members. Imagine you are painfully climbing a massive freezing mountain. Your safety rope is firmly tied to a man who has suddenly, inexplicably decided to give up and jump off the cliff. Gravity is absolute. You now possess only two possible choices in this brutal scenario. Option 1. You can foolishly honor your father's code, remain totally loyal, hold onto the heavy rope, and go screaming down into the dark abyss right alongside him. Option 2. You can swiftly draw your sharp knife and ruthlessly, instantly cut the rope. Your emotional father would desperately beg you to hold on tight until your hands physically bleed and you both inevitably fall to your deaths. He tragically calls that suicidal action unconditional love. The cold, objective Machiavellian calls it exactly what it is: pointless, pathetic suicide. You must fiercely choose to survive the climb alone. You absolutely must curate your inner circle with the ruthless, bloody precision of a wartime surgeon amputating a rotting limb. You must intentionally surround yourself exclusively with formidable people who are actively playing the brutal game of life at your exact high level or significantly higher. You must strictly seek out fellow apex predators. You must exclusively seek out those rare individuals who deeply understand the complex unspoken language of pure power, long-term strategy, and relentless, agonizing personal growth. If you look around and realize that you are the absolute smartest, most driven person in the room, you are dangerously resting in the entirely wrong room. But your father told you to proudly stay in that stagnant room because those are your people. He told you to be a big fish in a tiny drying pond. They are absolutely not your people. They are merely the fading ghosts of your past. You must absolutely never let your emotional heavy history actively hold your limitless conquering future hostage. We finally arrive at the 13th and ultimate lesson, the psychological necessity of killing the father. Your father looked at you, demanding respect, and told you, "Listen to me closely. I know what is best for you." He naturally positioned himself as the ultimate, unquestionable authority and the final judge of your worth and overall direction. The strategist implies a much deeper hidden law. The new rising prince must absolutely establish his own unyielding laws and his own sovereign domain. This is the grand meta lesson. This is the single overarching philosophy that encompasses absolutely all the others. To truly finally become the formidable man you are destined to be, you must act. You must metaphorically, psychologically, and ruthlessly kill your father. I absolutely do not mean literal physical violence. I mean that you must violently, permanently destroy the towering, judging idol of him that currently lives rent-free inside your own mind. You must completely shatter the high pedestal upon which his outdated worldview proudly sits. You must immediately and permanently stop desperately seeking his warm approval for your daily actions. You must immediately stop living your finite life by his deeply outdated, highly ineffective moral code. You must stop waiting patiently for him or anyone else to pat you on the head and tell you that you did a good job. That is the deep desire of a dog. As long as you are actively, secretly seeking the paternal validation of your actual father or the various surrogate father figures scattered throughout modern society, your demanding bosses, the corrupt politicians, the loud internet gurus, you remain fundamentally, psychologically, a weak child. A true sovereign man absolutely never seeks external validation. A true man solely and violently seeks absolute, undeniable conquest of his harsh environment. Your father, acting out of a desire for your safety, handed you a carefully drawn map. It was a genuinely good, reliable map for the world as it existed in 1990. It was a map perfectly designed for a society that was vastly slower and much kinder. But you must look around. You are surviving in the brutal, chaotic, hyper-competitive wilderness of the modern era right now. If you blindly follow his old, outdated map today, it will absolutely get you slaughtered by the hidden wolves. You must take that map, look at it one last time with respect, and then ruthlessly burn it to ashes. This psychological severing is undoubtedly the absolute most agonizing, painful part of the entire evolutionary process. It feels deeply viscerally like a terrible betrayal. It feels as though you are aggressively spitting on his grave, his life's work, or his cherished legacy. The guilt will actively try to drag you back down into the soft mud of compliance. But you must forcefully realize this fundamental truth underneath it all. Your father simply wanted you to survive. If he truly deeply knew what the modern world was actually like today, if he truly understood the vicious Machiavellian nature of modern global power dynamics, he absolutely would not want you to remain a helpless, bleeding sheep. He would desperately want you to transform into the most terrifying, capable wolf in the entire forest. He simply did not know how to teach you those dark arts. He entirely lacked the harsh vocabulary. He completely lacked the cold, ruthless heart required for it. Therefore, the heavy, necessary burden falls entirely upon your broad shoulders. You must do it for him. You absolutely must succeed wildly in the exact places where he quietly, tragically settled for mediocrity. You must be shockingly ruthless in the exact situations where he was paralyzingly polite. You must become incredibly, undeniably rich where he was fearfully frugal. You must become a towering force of power where he was completely passive and weak. That is exactly how you truly honor his ultimate desire for your survival. You absolutely do not honor a man by blindly mimicking his obvious limitations and repeating his historical failures. You honor him by completely transcending those limitations and building an empire he could never have fathomed. You must become the absolute apex of your bloodline. You have now received the 13 forbidden lessons that your father was far too afraid or far too naive to ever teach you. Let them ring clearly in your mind. 1. Tangible results are infinitely greater than noble effort. 2. The vital utility of absolute controlled cruelty. 3. The deliberate, masterful construction of your public reputation. 4. Absolute necessity is vastly more powerful than fleeting gratitude. 5. You must master the hybrid nature of the roaring lion and the cunning fox. 6. The world is absolutely not neutral, it is actively predatory. 7. Deep structural fear and respect are far greater than volatile love. 8. Calculated risk is the only escape from the slow death of safety. 9. Money is strictly power and ammunition, not a tool for peasant consumption. 10. You must possess the iron stomach to gladly be the villain. 11. The terrifying dominating power of strategic silence. 12. The ruthless bloody curation of your inner circle. 13. The psychological assassination of the ideal validation-giving father. This collection of harsh truths is absolutely not a simple passive checklist for self-improvement. It is a violent psychological resurrection. You initiated this philosophical inquiry as the fundamentally good son, the quiet one who patiently follows the rules, the one who politely waits his turn in line, the one who is utterly deeply exhausted of constantly losing. You must leave this exchange as something entirely different. You must forge yourself into something vastly darker, significantly heavier, and infinitely more dangerous. You are finally painfully realizing that the heavy guilt you constantly felt for secretly desiring absolute power was nothing more than a manipulative lie implanted in your mind to keep you docile. You are finally seeing with crystal clarity that the polite niceness you constantly performed for the world was in reality just deep-seated cowardice, cleverly wearing a very polite tuxedo. The fundamental structure of the world is about to look drastically, terrifyingly different to your newly opened eyes. The heavy veil of illusion has been violently torn away. When you walk into your corporate office tomorrow morning, you will absolutely no longer see friendly, smiling colleagues. You will strictly see calculating players positioned on a massive, complex chessboard. When you passively listen to the evening news, you will no longer hear objective facts. You will clearly hear calculated moves in a massive game of perception. When you finally look deeply into the mirror tonight, you will absolutely no longer see a helpless, battered victim of circumstance. You will see a cold, calculating, incredibly powerful architect of reality staring fiercely back at you. Make no mistake, adopting this stoic Machiavellian operating system is absolutely not an easy or comfortable path to walk. It is incredibly, profoundly lonely at the very top of the hierarchy, but you must remember that it is suffocatingly crowded, miserable, and pathetic at the absolute bottom. And at the bottom, where the masses huddle for warmth, the air is incredibly stale, the resources are fiercely fought over, and the view of the world is absolutely terrible. Your father genuinely loved you, but mere emotional love is entirely insufficient for survival in the wilderness. You desperately need cold, hard strategy. He successfully gave you deep, stable roots. The strategist now aggressively hands you heavy, sweeping wings and violently sharp claws. To truly thrive, you absolutely must learn to utilize both simultaneously. But here is the single, lingering, terrifying question. It is the exact thought that will actively haunt your mind tonight when you finally turn off the glowing screen and lie completely alone in the dark. Now that you definitively know the entire game is completely rigged, now that you clearly see that being conventionally good is a lethal trap, what will you do? Do you actually truly possess the iron stomach required to step onto the board and play the real bloody game? Because it is incredibly easy to passively read words about being a ruthless Machiavellian strategist. It is very easy to silently nod your head in agreement and feel a fleeting, artificial surge of power for 30 brief minutes in your room. It is infinitely harder, however, to look another human being directly in the eye, feel their intense emotional pressure, and coldly, firmly say, no. It is infinitely harder to ruthlessly fire an old, incompetent friend who is actively sinking your ship. It is infinitely harder to sit perfectly still in the heavy silence and let the entire world aggressively judge you. The tragic reality is that the vast majority of men will absorb this profound information, feel a tiny momentary spark of genuine ambition, and then pathetically go right back to being obedient, grazing sheep tomorrow morning. They will retreat because the known pasture, even if it eventually leads directly to the slaughterhouse, feels incredibly, deceptively safe. The ultimate question remains hanging heavily in the air. Are you just like most weak, predictable men, or are you the terrifying, unstoppable outlier? The forbidden historical advice has now been fully delivered to your mind. The heavy, crushing burden of this dark knowledge is now entirely yours to carry. What exactly will you choose to do with it? If this brutal deconstruction has truly shattered your illusions, you must deeply understand that this is only the very beginning of the descent. The foundational architecture has been exposed. The true mechanics of power, influence, and human subjugation run vastly deeper and darker than what can be comfortably expressed in a simple public discourse. The path of the true architect requires constant, unrelenting study of the human animal. It requires you to observe without emotion, to plan without hesitation, and to execute without remorse. The soft, comforting world you once knew is dead and gone forever. In its place stands a massive coliseum of endless, brutal competition. Step into the arena. The game has already begun.